Good afternoon, fourth grade. We are going to continue reading and Where the Mountain Meets the Moon later on today. But first, we have another text we want to discuss. It's called Oral Traditions. Yesterday, we were talking about folk tales, and if you are looking in your homeschool journal at the folk tales chart, you'll know that these stories are told out loud, which makes it an oral tradition, and they're also passed down from generation to generation. Today we're going to learn a little bit more about why cultures use storytelling or oral traditions. We are going to skip the quick write today because it's the same one you had yesterday, so we're going to skip that. But our focus question today is, what are the purposes and benefits of storytelling? And what are the characteristics of storytelling? We have 3 vocabulary words before we get started. The first one is tradition, and that's like a custom or belief that your family or your community or your culture has. And so you can draw a line to this picture. We have a Chinese tradition. It looks like a festival that they're going to. The second one is gesture. That's like a movement with part of your body to express an idea. So this person is making a gesture. And then the last one is improvisation. And that's when you begin to create something without preparation. You kind of do it on the fly. And so these musicians are using improvisation because they are making up the music as they go. Go ahead and turn the page in your notes to the page that has the Read Aloud as the title, and you can go ahead and tear off the back page that has this text, Oral Traditions. In Oral Traditions, this text is about something that is real, and so it's a nonfiction text. So for fiction text, we use CSPS, but today we're going to learn a nonfiction strategy to help us find the main idea. And to find the main idea of a nonfiction text, you would want to turn this title into a how or a why question. And so, we could say, how are oral traditions? But that doesn't make a lot of sense, so let's try the why. Why are oral traditions important? That makes more sense. So if I was annotating on my text, I would write the question out to the side. But you have space in your notes, so go ahead for number 1 and write, why are oral traditions important, in box number 1. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to read. And so in order to find the main idea, we are going to read these 3 paragraphs that have the section Oral Tradition, and we are going to underline the answer to that question we came up with. Why are oral traditions important? So as I'm reading out loud, have your pencil ready because I'm going to tell you what to underline. Let's get started. Oral traditions throughout the ages have provided society with a means of conveying and preserving their history, values, rituals, traditions, spiritual practices, genealogy, and other important collective knowledge and experience. I'm going to go ahead and underline that sentence because it helps me answer my question about why oral traditions are important. And they're important because they help communities preserve or know their history, their values, their culture. It's a way for everyone in the community to know the community's values through oral traditions. Let's keep reading. Oral traditions helped societies make sense of the world and were used to teach children and adults about the important aspects of their culture and the natural world. I'm going to underline that sentence as well because not only were they used to teach people about culture and history, oral traditions were also used to teach children and adults like how the community came to be. Let's keep going. In addition, storytelling provided entertainment, developed the imagination, taught lessons about everyday life, and passed on this information to the younger generation. And I'm going to underline that as well because it tells me they provided entertainment and imagination as they were teaching the lessons. So it was a creative way to teach children and adults lessons about the community's history and values. Let's keep reading. Oral traditions were important in all societies, but for some societies they became the preferred means of conveying this information to the community for various reasons. And I would underline that part that says it's the preferred reason, the preferred means for conveying information. So in some communities, they didn't have history books. They didn't have movies or films about their culture or songs like we might have today. Instead, they had oral traditions where they would all sit around and listen to one tell stories about the culture. Keep going. Storytelling developed in oral cultures because it was easy to remember information as a series of events instead of a set of facts. Underline that part that says because it was easier to remember information. Keep going. Without libraries or archives, it was the responsibility of the oral historians to keep records and orally pass the information to the younger generations. Third paragraph. Oral traditions are highly structured, and the storyline is repeated over generations with only small details changing. On the other hand, because they are oral texts, they are not static or unchanging. Therefore, the oral text may evolve somewhat with time, place, regional style, performer, and audiences in order to keep the ideas relevant. Also, the narrative may slowly change as the values and conditions of the society change, and additional scenes and descriptions may be added to improve the story or make it more meaningful. And so this last paragraph tells us how oral traditions change over time because the person telling the story changes, and they add in or take away their own details. Okay, we can stop right there, and we're going to go back and look at the things that we underlined in order to answer this question, why are oral traditions important? And so if I'm going through, I notice that the author kind of repeats herself in these two paragraphs. And so those things that she's repeating, that's what I'm going to put into my main idea. So it talks about how oral traditions are for the community and for preserving the history and life lessons. And also that it's easy to remember and entertaining. So she says that more than all those things more than once. So I'm going to take those ideas that she's repeated and I'm going to combine them into my main idea in box 1. Get ready to write the main idea. Oral traditions are important because they allow a community to easily remember their culture's history and important life lessons. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you are ready to move on. Box number 2 tells us what circumstances may cause an oral tradition to change. And I know I can go back to this third paragraph where it talks about change. And it tells me that it says, therefore, underline this, therefore the oral text may evolve, that's another word for change, somewhat with time, place, regional style, performer, and audiences in order to keep the ideas relevant. And so I can use that sentence to help me answer number 2. Get ready to write time, place, regional style, performer, audiences, and the changing values of the society might cause an oral tradition to change. Silently write that down in box 2, press pause to write down your answer, and play when you are ready to keep reading. In the second part of our text, I notice I have another subheading. So I'm going to turn that subheading into a how or why question to find the main idea of this section. So it says the art of storytelling and storytellers. So I could turn this into a how question and say, how is storytelling an art? And you can see I used most of the words in the subheading to come up with my question. Silently write that down in box 3. How is storytelling an art? Press pause to write down your answer and play when you are ready to read. I'm at storytelling. Follow along with your pencil and get ready to underline. Storytelling is an art. The storyteller's tools are words assisted by gestures, singing, facial expressions, body movements, and acting to make their stories more meaningful and interesting and to express moods and feelings. I would go ahead and underline that second sentence where that says storyteller's tools. This helps us understand how it's an art. They use gestures, singing, facial expressions, body movements to make this story memorable. Let's keep reading. The storyteller begins the presentation slowly, building up the tension and emotion until he reaches a dramatic climax. They perform epics that are sometimes hours or even days long, that relate the history and genealogy, battles, and political uprisings of a community. Next paragraph. Storytellers relay this information using a variety of formats, such as narratives, folktales, proverbs, riddles, and myths, to educate and entertain the community. In addition, skilled storytellers or wordsmiths use songs, dances, poetry, praise songs, and dramas, along with gestures and facial expressions, masks and costumes, and other devices to enhance their presentations. So we would underline this last sentence in the paragraph because it discusses or names the different art forms that are involved in storytelling. Turn over the page to keep reading. For many cultures, storytelling was an important communal event. The community sat together and listened, responded, and were entertained with accounts of past deeds, beliefs, taboos, myths, and tribal histories. The storyteller also played an important part in how stories were presented. The storyteller's interest and creativity provided opportunities for improvisation. I'm going to underline that sentence as well because it talks about how storytellers have to be creative and they use improv. And those are both examples of art. Keep going. Gifted and well-known storytellers often repeated the story with the same words and expressions in each performance. As they traveled or met other storytellers, they added to their repertoire. They may, at times, have added new material to an old story to make it more interesting or meaningful to the times and audiences. So if I'm going back in this section to find my main idea, I'm going to look over what I underlined and see what they have in common. And several times I underlined how storytellers use gestures, singing, facial expressions, and body movements to make their story entertaining. So get ready to write this main idea in box 3. Storytelling is an art because storytellers use a variety of tools to entertain their audiences and make the stories more memorable. For example, storytellers use facial expressions, body movements, and songs to bring creativity to oral traditions. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for number 4. what effect did the